wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think it was a 330. I'm not sure. But almost all of them, next time you take a commercial flight, take a peek in the cockpit as you're going.
Oh, sure. The way I look?
Yeah.
You know, I'm Lebanese, for crying out loud. I'm not going to look in the cockpit.
I find it's not healthy to ask too many questions about, gee, I'm a pilot. Can I look at this? No.
Yeah.
In your seat. But the scary part of that is you could have a Captain Soley sitting up front. We get hit by an EMP, and 1 second later, nothing works.
And you just drop.
You just drop like a rock.
And this would be every plane that's out there.
Not
of the big ones, commercial planes.
Yeah, almost all of our big current commercial planes that we're putting out are so computer-driven. I was just reading...
How many flights do we have up in the air at any time?
You know, you can find that right online. Just Google up...
It's got to be thousands.
At any given moment during the daytime, there's about 2,500 to 3,000 commercial aircraft crisscrossing the United States. I was appalled when I read the first congressional study back in 2004 in which a person dismissing the threat of EMP was saying, at most we'll have a couple of thousand casualties. I would love to confront him and say, would you please rewrite that again while flying on a commercial aircraft and a warning suddenly goes out that there's an EMP strike on the way.
Now, if this happens and we take this kind of first strike, do we retaliate? But who do you retaliate against? If this is off some ship, some boat somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico or the Pacific Ocean, how in the heck do we know where it came from?
You hit it exactly, and it's a profound moral question. We might not even know who it came from, where it came from.
You can't take out the entire planet.
Well, okay, let's build a scenario. We have 2 launches coming off of the Gulf of Mexico, one off of the Pacific coast. About 10 minutes later, those ships blow up with somebody shouting Allah Akbar as they hit the detonators. The ships sink. How do we trace it out? Maybe that ship docked at a dozen different places from the time it initially acquired the weapon system.
Right.
Do you recall last year when a Russian cargo container ship disappeared for like 8 or 10 days?
Yeah.
And here we are with all our modern surveillance equipment and satellites and everything.
Couldn't find it.
We couldn't find the bloody thing for 10 days.
Did we ever find that airliner that disappeared?
Yes. They finally found the cockpit recorders. There was just a print up on it.
It was a 737 or something like that, wasn't it?
Oh no! Are we talking about the Air France one?
No, there was a Boeing plane that just disappeared. Not with people on it. The plane just disappeared.
I
got to go back and dig that information up. It was a couple of years ago.
That bothers me. I have not heard about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Before we went to the break, you mentioned what happens in that first second. It's going to be aircraft plummeting, and then the whole electrical grid is offline. You definitely do not want to be in an elevator 80 stories up.
Oh yeah, and then you're up creek there too. What about our defenses?
That is a tough classified question to ask and answer. I have to always emphasize, I deal strictly with declassified, unclassified information. I go to a lot of conferences. DOD's invited me to a couple of different places. I've been at the War College, but very strict. I simply work off of unclassified information. So I cannot give you a clear answer as to our military assets here in the United States.
By the way, it was a Boeing 737 disappeared in Mumbai, the old Bombay.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? It happened about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's gone. Nobody knows where it is. Somebody's got it. Somebody took it.
Somebody's got it, and who knows what the hell they're loading on?
Exactly.
The assets we have overseas in terms of a military event against the continental United States would still be there. And to try and answer your other question, what do we do back? Let's say we trace it back to Iran. Do we annihilate?
And do you believe anybody when they say that? See, there's that possibility, too, that they blame someone else so they can create a war. Who knows? I mean, I don't trust anybody anymore, William.
Neither do I. And listening to your program helps me with that.
I mean, would we, when I say we, this covert government that's out there, would they do this to us? These globalists who would love to see problems?
I couldn't answer that. I can say that with a military event, the shattering of the United States and our infrastructure and the projection of 90% of all Americans dead within a year, and that is one hell of a grim number.
Oh, my God.
Realistic. Think of the economic, political, social, military power vacuum, and then the global confusion that's going to trigger afterwards. Nature abhors a vacuum. That type of political vacuum, think of how that's going to resonate around the world in the first couple of days.
Well, if someone takes us out, then I think there would also be, this is how militarily I look at things, somebody would then attack our allies instantly.
Of course.
Yeah. And then we'd know where it came from, but it'd be a little too late for us, unless we still have some capability in some bunker somewhere.
I have a character in my novel that I developed this as a novel to try and get the word out, and it's been a bestseller for a couple of years.
Should be a movie.
We're working on that right now.
Okay.
And about halfway, two-thirds of the way through the novel, some word gets into the village where people are dying like flies at this point about, well, we think these guys did it, and, do we plaster the hell out of them? To which this character responds back, does that change anything here?
Yeah.
Does that save the lives we've lost? Does that provide medication for my daughter now? Does that change anything? We've lost. EMP is a war-winning, destructive system in which America could lose its position in 1 second and never regain it.
Is there a possibility, William, that technically an EMP pulse bomb would not do this?
Everything I have seen says it's beyond what we think it might be. There are two declassified, documented detonations of EMP weapons. You can Google them up. One is Starfish, one word, Starfish Prime, which was a detonation 500 miles south of Hawaii in the early 1960s that blew out a 1960s overbuilt power grid system in a fair part of the Hawaiian Islands. The other one, as I mentioned earlier, is Soviet Test 182, which is blowing out a power plant 500 miles away from the point of detonation. Now, consider how overbuilt our electronics, our automobiles, our power grid was in 1960 as compared to the highly delicate computerized driven systems we have today. That the slightest power fluctuation can burn it. We're far more vulnerable now than we've ever been before.
I can't believe that there's no one in Congress anymore other than the people you've dealt with who are doing this and pushing this and trying to get something done. How possible is it to insulate the grid?
Congressman Bartlett has pointed out, and let me add a great point of frustration here. Bartlett has a wonderful team of people working around him. One of my heroes is Dr. Peter Pry, who has spent 30 years studying this. They spent 5 years developing a bill that went up a year and a half ago to start the hardening, at least creating the bureaucratic infrastructure.
Right.
It passed the House unanimously. Now, we're talking about a very divided House 2 years ago. Boom. Went right through. Went from committee, unanimous pass, then had to go to the Senate, and one senator killed the bill because it didn't have the perks for her state that she wanted. One senator. And you almost had to hit the delete button.
What perks did she want? Did she want a better insulated grid in her state, or what?
She just wanted more for the state of Alaska.
Jeez.
Yeah, you almost had to hit the button like Fortune's about to have a Tourette moment. When she did that, she burned out 5 years worth of work. You know how much it costs to try and get a bill even passed?
I know it.
Millions and millions of dollars.
What about the word nationwide, mainstream media, TV, network news, cable television? Are they touching this? I don't see it.
They touch it, but frustratingly, it is so bloody inaccurate most of the time. In your own programming, you have some people raising some very, very serious, valid issues on a number of different fronts.
Yeah.
But then you have somebody that comes along with just some wild, cockeyed idea, not even on your show, but somewhere else, and everybody points in that person's direction and goes, oh, you just dismiss the whole thing. It's all crazy. That's the problem with EMP. Doesn't it sound sci-fi?
Yes.
And therefore, it gets dismissed. Or Hollywood does such insane things. I mean, one of those Oceans 11 or Oceans 12, we'll EMP Las Vegas and we'll knock the power out for 30 seconds, and then we can break into the vaults. The one that really drove me wild
for 30 seconds.
War of the Worlds. Remember Tom Cruise? Oh, just change the solenoid, my car works again.
Yeah.
And therefore, you have a public that is ill-educated or outright ignorant as to what's going on, and the people who really do know what's going on, they're made to sound like they're ridiculous.
In your opinion, is it easier for a rogue nation or a nation that has nukes to do an EMP pulse attack than a regular conventional nuke attack?
I would define EMP as a first-strike weapon in the hands of a third-rate power. When we and the Soviets were facing off, as we were talking about a bit earlier, it was mutual shore destruction. You EMP us, we EMP you.
By the time your missile hits us, ours is on the way.
And you don't want to deal with that afterwards, guys, do you? So we're not going to do it.
And, William, I was in the Navy. What was our greatest nuke deterrent? Submarines.
Right. A couple boomers out there loaded with MIRVs. Each boomer carries the equivalent of 20, 24?
18 to 24 warheads?
Each missile carried up to 10. And I believe in what they would call Sherwood Forest.
So that was a deterrent.
Yeah.
They knew within minutes we had subs and we could launch at any time. And so they said, you know what, we're not going to screw around. The Cuban Missile Crisis, which a lot of people don't remember anymore, put us on the edge of a nuke war with the Soviets. And the reason why it never happened was because Khrushchev and Kennedy were smart enough to realize nobody wins.
Right. And yet, an example I like to give is, so suppose I come home tomorrow, I'm hearing gunfire. I live up in the mountains here in North Carolina. You hear gunfire occasionally, but let's say a new neighbor's moved in, and I'm hearing gunfire, and I peek over the fence, and he's target practicing on a picture of me. Well, listen to the rhetoric coming out of Iran. We're going to bathe the great Satan in nuclear death.
Yeah.
We're going to annihilate Israel. We're going to rain nuclear destruction down upon the world.
Yeah, I don't hear things like, we love you, we want to live in peace, we just need nuke power for our homes, please help us. I don't hear that.
Nope. So, if somebody's taking target practice on a picture of me and shouting how he's going to kill me, I think I'm going to take it rather seriously.
Yeah, I think you should.
And we are not doing that with our foreign policy right now. We are not conveying a clear message. Don't even think about it, because you won't be there tomorrow morning. We're going to go after the leadership, not the innocent civilians. We're going to go after you.
One by one.
The tragedy is, let's say North Korea did it. How do we get back? There's millions of people stuck on the surface who are starving to death, while the leadership is 1,000 feet below, underground, laughing.
That's right. Doing well.
What's the moral question there? Do we annihilate millions of people who are innocent? Or do we convey to that leadership beforehand, we know where you are, and we will stop you before you even start?
I like the latter. That's the smarter approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the innocents that get hurt.
Exactly. I teach a course on World War II at my college, and I try to point out repeatedly that in 1938, if only we could have shown to the people of Germany and Japan, listen, we might seem like patsies and pushovers, but here's film footage of what Dresden, Berlin, Tokyo, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki are going to look like 5